The mahogany conference table gleamed under the fluorescent lights of Barrett and Associates' main boardroom. 12 faces stared back at me, each wearing a carefully crafted mask of professional concern. But I knew better. I'd seen the same expressions 6 years ago, when I first walked into this room as a junior partner, young and naive, believing that hard work and loyalty actually meant something. I'm Sarah Barrett, no relation to the company's founder, just a coincidence that had sparked endless jokes during my early days here. Now, at 34, I was about to witness just how quickly a decade of dedication could be erased with a single vote. CEO Michael Thompson sat at the head of the table, his Mont Blanc pen tapping an impatient rhythm against his leather portfolio. "Shall we begin?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. Nothing was a question with Michael, just carefully orchestrated moves in his endless game of corporate chess. I adjusted my blazer, a simple black Armani that cost more than my first month's salary. "Before we start, I'd like to review the quarterly numbers." Michael's smile tightened. "That won't be necessary, Sarah. We have more pressing matters to discuss." Of course we did, like how they planned to push me out without triggering the clause in my contract that would cost them millions in severance, or how they'd explain to our clients that the person who'd built their trust over the past decade was suddenly pursuing other opportunities. I opened my laptop anyway, ignoring the collective sigh of irritation around the table. First quarter revenues up 42% year over year. Client retention at 98%, the highest in company history. New account acquisition exceeded targets by... "Sarah," Michael cut in, his voice sharp. "This meeting isn't about numbers." I looked up, met his gaze. "Isn't it?" "Because I thought that's what we did here. Focus on results. Or has that changed since last month's partnership meeting when you said, and I quote, 'Performance is everything'?" A few board members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. They knew what was coming. They'd probably rehearsed their roles in this little coup. "The board has concerns," Michael continued, pulling out a thick folder, "about your management style." I almost laughed. My management style had built this firm's client portfolio from regional accounts to Fortune 500 companies. My style had transformed Barrett and Associates from a mid-tier consulting firm into an industry leader. "What concerns specifically?" I asked, though I already knew. This wasn't about management style. This was about power, about control, and about the fact that I'd refused to play by their unwritten rules. "There have been complaints," Victoria Pierce, the HR director, chimed in, "about your aggressive approach to client retention." "Aggressive?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean successful?" "Some feel you've developed inappropriately close relationships with clients," Michael added, "creating potential risk for the firm." Now I did laugh. Just once, sharp and cold. Inappropriate relationships? Like the kind you tried to cultivate with Margaret Chen at State Corp before she shut you down and requested to work exclusively with my team. Michael's face reddened. That had been a particularly embarrassing episode for him. Losing a $50 million account because he couldn't take no for an answer. "The board has voted," he said, pushing a document across the table. "Effective immediately, you're being removed from your position as managing partner of client relations." I didn't touch the paper. Instead, I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and waited. "Your access to company systems will be terminated within the hour," Victoria added, trying to sound sympathetic. "It is already." "Did any of you actually read my contract?" I interrupted, looking around the table. "The one you all signed when you made me the youngest partner in firm history." Blank stares. Of course they hadn't. They'd been too busy celebrating their brilliant move of promoting a young woman to partnership, perfect for their diversity reports and industry press. Section 7.3. I continued. In the event of involuntary termination, all client relationships personally cultivated by the partner revert to their exclusive management. That's standard language, Michael scoffed. It doesn't mean. It means exactly what it says, I cut in. And as of 8 minutes ago, when you called this vote, 247 clients received automated emails informing them of my departure and the immediate termination of their contracts with Barrett and Associates. The room erupted in chaos. Phones started buzzing. Laptops flew open. Victoria's face went pale as she frantically scrolled through her messages. You can't do this. Michael stood up, his carefully maintained composure cracking. Those are company clients. No, I said calmly, standing to match his posture. They're my clients. Every single one of them signed engagement letters with me personally. Check the paperwork. Oh wait, you can't. Because none of you ever bothered to read the contracts I drafted. This is illegal, someone shouted. We'll sue. Go ahead, I smiled. I'm sure the press will love hearing how Barrett and Associates treats its female partners. How you tried to force me out because I wouldn't let you take credit for my success. How you... Enough. Michael slammed his hand on the table. What do you want? Want? I picked up my bag, closed my laptop. I don't want anything from you. I just thought you should know what you're actually voting on today. Not just my removal, but the loss of 82% of the firm's revenue. Clients who trust me, not the Barrett and Associates logo. The non-compete, Victoria started, doesn't apply in cases of involuntary termination. I finished for her. Section 12.1. You really should read these things before you sign them. My phone buzzed again. More client emails flooding in, confirming their contract terminations. Some already asking about my next move. You've built nothing without us. Michael spat. You think clients will follow you? You're nothing but a... Careful, I warned. You're already facing a massive revenue loss. Let's not add a discrimination lawsuit to your problems. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and Michael? Remember that merger you've been working on with Western Group? The one you're announcing next week? I had breakfast with their CEO this morning. Fascinating how quickly plans can change when people learn the truth about a company's leadership. The blood drained from his face. The merger had been his crown jewel, his guarantee of a corner office in the new combined firm. You wouldn't. I already did. Check your phone. The press release should be hitting any minute now. I left them there, surrounded by buzzing phones and panicked whispers. In the elevator, I finally let myself smile. Not because I'd won, though I had, but because for the first time in 10 years, I felt free. My real office wasn't in this building anyway. It was in a converted warehouse across town, where for the past year, I'd been quietly building my own consulting firm. A place where success would be measured by merit, not politics. Where loyalty would actually mean something. And tomorrow, when the dust settled, and the reality of what they'd lost hit home, I'd be ready. Ready to show them exactly what they'd thrown away. But first, I had some clients to call. The next morning dawned cold and bright, sunlight glinting off the steel and glass towers of downtown. I sat in my real office, not the corporate showcase I'd left behind at Barrett and Associates, but the converted industrial space. I'd been preparing for this exact moment. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since yesterday. First came the panic calls from Barrett's board members, then their lawyers, and finally, predictably, Michael himself, his voice strained as he left message after message about discussing terms and finding common ground. I let them all go to voicemail. Instead, I focused on the emails from clients. 212 of them had already confirmed they were following me to my new venture. 35 more wanted meetings to discuss terms. Only 3 had expressed hesitation, and those were the ones I'd always known were more aligned with Michael's old-school networking approach. The press is here. Maya, my new chief of operations, said from the doorway. She'd left Barrett and Associates 6 months ago, officially for family reasons. In reality, she'd been helping me build this parallel organization from the ground up. I nodded, straightening my navy suit. Let's not keep them waiting. The conference room, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows, was packed with reporters. Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg. Word had spread fast about Barrett and Associates' implosion. Ms. Barrett, a reporter from Reuters, jumped in first. Sources say you've taken nearly 80% of Barrett and Associates' client base with you. How do you respond to accusations of corporate sabotage? I smiled, taking my place at the podium. I didn't take anything. I simply reminded clients of their contractual rights when Barrett's leadership decided to breach our partnership agreement. And the Western Group merger? Someone else called out. Was it your intention to derail that deal? I merely shared some concerns about Barrett's leadership culture with Western's board. They made their own decisions based on that information. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another call from Michael. Delete. Is it true that you've been planning this for over a year? Another reporter asked. That you deliberately cultivated personal relationships with clients knowing you'd eventually leave. I cultivated those relationships because that's what good business is about. Trust, personal connection, and genuine commitment to client success. If Barrett's leadership saw that as a threat rather than an asset, well, I paused, letting the implications sink in. That says more about them than me. The questions continued for another hour. I answered each one carefully, never letting emotion crack my professional veneer. But inside, I was smiling at how perfectly everything had fallen into place. After the press conference, I had back-to-back video calls with major clients. Most just wanted reassurance that their projects would continue smoothly under my new company, Adeline Consulting Group. Sarah, Margaret Chin from State Corp said during our call, I have to admit, I've been waiting for this. The way they treated you, it was only a matter of time. You knew? She laughed. Everyone knew. We just wondered when you'd finally stop letting them take credit for your work. By early afternoon, the financial impact of my departure was becoming clear. Barrett and Associates stock had dropped 40% since opening. Trading was temporarily halted twice to prevent further freefall. Maya brought me the latest numbers. They've lost over $300 million in market value since yesterday. Board members are starting to jump ship. I was reviewing the data when my office door burst open. Michael Thompson stood there, face red, security rushing up behind him. It's okay? I told the guards. Let him have his moment. You destroyed everything, he snarled, stalking into my office. Years of work, millions in value, all because your ego couldn't handle a simple leadership transition. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. He looked older somehow, diminished without his expensive office and corporate backdrop. Interesting perspective, I said calmly. Here's mine. I spent a decade building relationships you took for granted. I brought in clients you couldn't land. I delivered results while you played golf and called it networking. And when you tried to push me out, because I wouldn't play by your boys' club rules, you discovered that those relationships belonged to me, not your corporate logo. We made you, he shouted. You were nothing before Barrett and Associates. I stood up slowly. No, Michael, I made me. And I made Barrett and Associates what it is today. Or rather, what it was yesterday. The board is preparing legal action, he threatened. We'll freeze your assets, block your clients. With what evidence? I asked, opening my laptop. The contracts you never read? The client agreements that explicitly give them the right to follow their chosen representative. Or maybe you'd like to explain to a judge why you violated every clause of our partnership agreement. He deflated slightly, the reality of his position finally sinking in. What do you want? He asked, voice hoarse. Name your price to return the clients. I walked to the window, looked out at the city skyline. They're not commodities to be traded, Michael. They're relationships built on trust, something you never understood. Please, he said, and I heard real fear in his voice now. The firm won't survive this. No, I agreed. It won't. At least not as you knew it. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe it's time for a new kind of consulting firm. One that values merit over politics, results over rhetoric. My phone buzzed again. Western Group's CEO requesting a meeting to discuss transferring their business to Avalon. Security will show you out, I said, turning back to my desk. Oh, and Michael? The corner office you wanted in the merged firm? I hear it has a great view of the unemployment line. After he left, Maya brought in the afternoon reports. More clients confirming their transfer to Avalon. More Barrett and Associates employees sending their resumes. The marketplace responding exactly as I'd predicted. They never saw it coming. Maya mused, sorting through the papers. All those years, they thought they were in control. I smiled, remembering all the late nights, the missed holidays, the countless times I'd swallowed my pride while they took credit for my work. Control is an illusion, I said. Real power comes from building something people can't afford to lose. And I was just getting started. 1 month after the board meeting that changed everything, I stood in my new office at Avalon Consulting Group, watching the sun rise over the city. The morning news played silently on a wall-mounted screen, showing footage of Barrett and Associates' latest crisis. Former industry giant faces bankruptcy amid mass client exodus. My phone lit up with a message from Maya. Barrett's board called an emergency meeting. Word is they're discussing liquidation options. I set my coffee down and opened my laptop to review the morning numbers. Avalon had successfully transitioned 238 of Barrett's former clients, representing over $400 million in annual revenue. Our staff had grown from the initial team of 20 to 150, many of them former Barrett employees who jumped ship once they saw which way the wind was blowing. Ms. Barrett? My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Victoria Pierce is here to see you. I smiled. I'd been wondering when Barrett's HR director would show up. Send her in. Victoria looked different without her corporate armor. The designer suit was the same, but her posture had changed. Less rigid, more desperate. Sarah, she started, then stopped, seeming unsure how to continue. Have a seat, Victoria. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. I assume this isn't a social call. She sat, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. The board, they want to discuss terms. Terms? I raised an eyebrow. For what exactly? A merger, or rather, an acquisition. They're prepared to offer you controlling interest in Barrett and Associates in exchange for. I cut her off with a laugh. You want me to buy the company I just destroyed. The same company that tried to force me out. It's a good offer, she pressed. The Barrett name still has value, and with your client base. My client base is perfectly happy where they are, I interrupted. But I'm curious. Whose idea was this? Michael's? Victoria's silence was answer enough. Let me guess, I continued. He thought he could appeal to my ego. Offer me the chance to own the company that rejected me? Classic Michael, always thinking everyone wants what he wants. He's gone, Victoria said quietly. Resigned last week. Most of the board, too. We're drowning, Sarah. I stood and walked to the window. Below, workers were installing Avalon's new logo on the building's facade. Clean, modern, nothing like Barrett's old-fashioned corporate branding. Do you remember what you said to me 3 years ago, Victoria? When I raised concerns about gender bias in partnership promotions? She shifted uncomfortably. Sarah, that was. You said, sometimes we have to accept that change takes time. Well, time's up. Change isn't something you wait for anymore. It's something you make happen. Please, she whispered. Hundreds of jobs are at stake. I turned back to face her. Those people are welcome to apply at Avalon. We're always looking for talent who value merit over politics. But Barrett and Associates? It's finished. And we both know it. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with breaking news. Barrett and Associates stock had been suspended from trading. The end was near. Victoria stood, shoulders slumped. What should I tell the board? Tell them thank you, I said. If they hadn't tried to push me out, I might never have built something better. After she left, Maya came in with the afternoon briefing. 4 more major clients finalizing their transfer paperwork. Western Group wants to expand their contract. Oh, and that article in Forbes just went live. I pulled up the article on my tablet. The Revolution in Consulting. How Sarah Barrett Reshaped an Industry. The subtitle made me smile. Sometimes the greatest success stories start with rejection. My phone buzzed again. A message from Margaret Chin. Saw the Forbes piece. You started something bigger than you know. Half my CEO network is reviewing their consulting contracts, asking questions about diversity and leadership. You scared them all. Good, I thought. They should be scared. Later that evening, as I was preparing to leave, Maya brought in one final document. You'll want to see this. It was an email from Michael Thompson, forwarded by one of our former colleagues. In it, he tried to explain to Barrett's remaining board members how he'd mishandled the situation with me, how he'd underestimated the importance of client relationships, how he'd failed to recognize the changing nature of the industry. Too little, too late, Maya commented. No, I said, reading through his desperate attempts at self-justification. It's exactly on time. This is what accountability looks like. The next morning, I called an all-hands meeting. Our new office space, 3 floors of the city's most prestigious business address, was packed with employees, many of them former Barrett staff who'd chosen to follow me. 1 month ago, we set out to build something different. Not just a consulting firm, but a new way of doing business. Where talent matters more than tenure. Where relationships mean more than rankings. Where innovation isn't just a buzzword, but a way of life. I paused, looking out at the faces before me. Young analysts who'd never have gotten a chance at Barrett. Experienced consultants who'd been passed over for promotion because they didn't fit the traditional mold. All of them here because they believed in something better. Yesterday, Barrett and Associates announced their filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Some will call this a tragedy. Others will call it justice. I call it evolution. The old way of doing business, where power was hoarded by a select few, where success depended more on who you knew than what you could do. That way is dying, and we're building what comes next. The room erupted in applause. I raised my hand for silence. But this isn't about revenge. It's about revolution, about showing the world that success doesn't have to come at the expense of ethics, that power doesn't have to corrupt, that the future belongs to those who build it, not those who inherit it. My phone buzzed. Another client signing on. Another victory in the quiet revolution we'd started. So yes, celebrate today. But tomorrow, we get back to work. Because we're not just running a company, we're changing an industry, and we're just getting started. That evening, as the city lights began to twinkle on, I stood in my office one last time, thinking about the journey that had brought me here, about the board meeting that had meant to end my career, but had instead launched something new, about the lessons learned and the battles won. My phone buzzed with a final message for the day, a news alert. Barrett and Associates to cease operations after 45 years. Below it, a quote from an industry analyst. This marks the end of an era in consulting and the beginning of something new. I smiled, turned off my office lights, and headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that success doesn't always look like what people expect. Sometimes it looks like a woman walking out of a board meeting with nothing but her dignity and a client list. Sometimes it looks like revolution. Sometimes it looks like me.